We're here today to talk a little bit about two things. One, historic preservation and a program in California that is called the Mills Act, which allows owners to benefit from investment in restoring or rehabilitating historic properties. What you're looking at is a turn of the century Queen Anne cottage, probably designed by a man by the name of Douglas Knox Frazier, who did Oak Grove in Monterey, and at some point in time and space took up residence here. Sometime in the 1950s, the owners decided they were going to clad it in Sears aluminum siding. Sears thought that that would be a solution to any painting in the future. And so what they did was two things. They disguised the original building envelope and its materials, but two, they protected the building materials. So now we're going to try to return it to its original appearance, or close to its original appearance, by removing the siding and doing some repairs where damage has occurred over time. And the damage that occurred over time is easily seen right down here where there is no foundation under the front porch. The owners, with all good intent, went to the city to get a building permit to repair the porch. And in the process of attempting to repair the porch, it was discovered that the lack of foundation and the rising damp, water coming up through the wood, had destroyed it to the point that when they touched it, it fell apart. And so they tried to carefully remove those portions that were not good, and it turned out nothing under the porch was any good. And so they were delayed in their continuing process, which will begin with putting a proper foundation for the new porch base. Fortunately, they took a photograph. They documented the original appearance of the base of that porch, the wood portion. And so they have that as the model to work from a photograph. Otherwise, they would have had major drawings or had to have done major drawings or made a pretty good guess. But as it stands, we do have that documented. Now, the Mills Act itself, it allows the owner to realize a tax deduction for work done bringing the building back to its original appearance and maintaining it. And that means infrastructure. That also means treatment on the exterior. In this instance, we're going to have to replace some bad windows with something more like the original windows. So we're going to be looking at 1/1 double hung wood windows in here that are consistent with the proportions of the building envelope. And the material on the surface now, the remaining aluminum siding, will be very carefully removed. The building will be patched and then eventually painted, probably re-roofed. So it's not an onerous process, but it has to be a careful process.
What first attracted us to this house was the almost Victorian look, if I may say, you know, the gingerbread, the details that you wouldn't expect to find on a house today. One of the telling things of an older house is the siding. You see on this house, it's very small to the weather, and that was the style in the old days. Nowadays, you can't even buy that. You'd have to have it milled out. You know, that gingerbread on that one that has the scallops is another detail that was somewhat prevalent. You know, it marked that era. And so looking at it, we thought, well, there had to be something nice underneath it. But one of the things I noticed at first was this porch was collapsing. It's on probably about a 15, maybe 20-degree angle. What's really nice about historic buildings is they've got all these nice low railings and everything, which are totally not legal anymore. And so when you restore it, but you can stay with it. I mean, because it gives it that charm, you know, that sets it apart. What we want to do here is restore this and make it safe and in character right now. And we're going to match this siding for now. Then we're going to eventually peel this aluminum off and see what's underneath, whether it's vertical, like this tongue and groove, or horizontal. It may be both, you don't know. Those doors are not original doors, those are slab doors, so we'll replace that. The casing is kind of an example of the original casings. They were usually flat, not too elaborate. And these windows are aluminum windows. And I believe that the openings were enlarged. And so we're going to bring it back to what would have been that era window. Because as you know, back then, the rooms are small because people had extended families, and so they had to have a room for everybody. So then we'll bring that back, and it'll totally look just as good as it ever looked, I believe.